here's the problem with most business owners. And I leant forward. I went, oh, this is going to be really interesting. I can just tell, it was one of
Yeah.
those moments. And he goes, we think too small. We simply aren't thinking big enough. And I went, yeah, he's right. He goes, name a franchise in New Zealand. And so everyone, came up with the usual suspects, McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And he goes, where did they originate from? It was USA, maybe there was Canada, one from the UK. And he says, name a brand that went from New Zealand and went globally. And everyone starts looking around going, who's got the answers? No one had the answers. And then
Mhm.
when we look back at the front of the room, he was peering down his specs and goes, and that is exactly what I'm talking about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo. I am your host, and my guest here today is Paul O'Donohue, who is the founder and CEO at SalesStar. Paul, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, look, it's my pleasure. I'm pretty excited about being here, actually. Living,
100%.
yeah,
And
all the
so
way
am I.
from the how to say the two little rocks on the South Pacific, which is called New Zealand.
Yeah, 100%. And it's great to have you here today because I think I mentioned to you, we've had one or two other ones where their company was also focused around sales and such. So I'd love to hear your perspectives on so many different topics as well. But why don't we start off with you just telling everyone a little bit more about yourself, about SalesStar, who you guys are, and any context you'd like to share within the business.
Well, how far back do you want me to go, Joel?
um, Dinosaurs and such. Like if you can go back, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
look, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview here.
Go
So,
ahead. Yeah.
my professional career, I started out as an electrician. So,
Oh.
10 years as an industrial electrician. And prior to getting an electrical apprenticeship, straight out of school, I did some sales. I did some retail sales. I
Hmm.
actually sold for electrical wholesaler. But my parents, this is quite a funny line, but my parents said, go and get a trade because I don't think sales will amount for anything. But you know what? It's one of those things where I did a trade to appease my parents. And look, at the end of the day, once you've got a trade, no one can take that off you.
For sure.
And but in the hearts of hearts, I knew I was wired to really to use my interpersonal skills to make a difference, help people, and grow businesses. And for me, that's what sales was all about.
Hmm.
So the interesting thing is when I was an industrial electrician. I did a diploma of electrical engineering. So I worked in manufacturing plants,
Hmm.
like optimizing machineries,
Okay.
machine and production lines. What I realized in that time, because I wanted to start my own business, which I thought was going to be electrical business,
Hmm.
but when I looked at most tradespeople, they were terrible at selling. They were terrible at business.
Yeah.
In fact, electricians, which is probably one of the most dangerous trades, were undercutting each other. So, it was a race to the bottom, and I thought
Hmm.
there must be a better way. So, me getting into corporate sales was just investing in myself because I actually wanted to do another apprenticeship of sorts, which was
Hmm.
learn about business, learn about sales, learn as much as I can,
Hmm.
then start an electrical
Yeah.
business. But what actually happened in that time was the more I learned about business and the more I learned about sales, the more I knew I didn't know. And it became a passion. It became this, I was hell bent on learning about business and business growth.
Hmm.
And putting back on tool belts and crawling under dirty machines and getting grease under my nails wasn't kind of my thing.
Yeah. The
So,
hardest part of washing off as well. Oh, it's so annoying.
I know. And what's more annoying though is getting stuck in corporate life. So, I went into corporate sales. My first job was as a sales engineer. I'd go into manufacturing plants all around New Zealand, and I would look at how to optimize their performance and throughput for the factory. That was a really cool job.
Hmm.
Didn't teach me anything about sales, which was I found interesting.
Uh-huh.
First year on the job, they just said, go and build relationships and go and talk to people and take an interest.
Mm.
I didn't even know what a sales process was or how to ask questions. It wasn't really a good introduction, but um, I was I was good despite not knowing about sales structures
Hmm.
and systems and processes. And then, long story short, is I found myself working at one of the top, at the time, 50 companies in the world, which was Tyco Electronics.
Mm.
So I was sort of, now I'm in my early 30s working at Tyco Electronics. I decided to go to university late at life because, most people went to university. I want to go to trade. So I did a diploma of business administration, a postgrad actually.
Mm.
And inside of those classes, I was more leaning towards entrepreneurial papers like new business ventures, marketing,
Mhm.
franchising, and it really sort of sparked that whole. I don't want to sit and waste my life in corporate and be another number. I
Mhm.
actually want to do something that's entrepreneurial and
Mhm.
grow my own business. And I was sitting. So actually, what happened was towards the end of my university papers, I'd actually left corporate and bought into a general business franchising. So it was like, business in a box. You're a business coach. Go and
Yeah.
serve a whole bunch of small businesses and fix all their issues. But what I realized in that time, there were a couple of things I realized was I'm not a very good generalist. I really
Okay.
gravitated towards top line growth and sales for companies. And the business model, that franchising model, was flawed.
Mm.
And so it's sort of, it was a perfect storm because one of the papers that I did was this franchising paper. And this is what sparked off my business now, which is 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I was sitting inside this franchising paper lecturer. It was a new class. The lecturer walked in unannounced, and what he said was, "Here's the problem with most business owners." And I leant forward. I went, "Oh, this is going to be really interesting." I can just tell, it was one of
Yeah.
those moments. And he goes, "We think too small. We simply aren't thinking big enough." And I went, "Yeah, he's right." He goes, "Name a franchise in New Zealand." And so everyone, you know, came up with the usual suspects: McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And he goes, "Where did they originate from?" It was USA, maybe there was Canada, one from the UK. And he says, "Name a brand that went from New Zealand and went globally." And everyone starts looking around going, "Who's got the answers?" No one had the answers. And then
Mhm.
when we look back at the front of the room, he was peering down his specs and goes, "And that is exactly what I'm talking about. We think too small." And then he said this real powerful word. He goes, Imagine taking a brand from New Zealand and growing it globally." And I was like, that's all I could imagine for the next trimester.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to grow a brand from New Zealand,
Mhm.
and I want to do it, and just expand my thinking. Like,
Mhm. It
how
became
could I?
your focus. Yeah.
And I went and got this pretty much a blank piece of paper, and I think half the battle of knowing what you want is understanding what you don't want.
Mhm. Yeah. For sure.
So what I realized, I didn't want to be an electrician anymore. I didn't want to have an electrical business, and I didn't think that having an electrical business could scale. What I was really enjoying was working with businesses to help them grow their top line.
Mhm.
And so, a couple of things. I'd started to develop myself, personal development, and I can remember the old adage. It was like, find something you're passionate about, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So I literally wrote down on a piece of paper everything I was passionate about. And I wrote the word sales because I was passionate about sales.
Mhm.
And I wrote the word training. And then I wrote down two other words, which was assessment and recruitment, because I'd done a little bit of work around, I spent about 18 months in the recruitment industry. But in particular, I was enamored and really interested on assessment tools, how you could diagnose people, whether they could sell or they couldn't,
Mhm.
how effective they were. And when I looked at the acronym, it said STAR. And that's where the
Perfect.
STAR comes from, because the other acronym was terrible, which was RATS.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I know a thing or two about marketing, and RATS wasn't a really good acronym. So
Yeah.
um, that's really how it started. I had that vision sparked off by this lecturer who said, "Imagine growing a global brand from little old New Zealand." So that really sparked things off. Then it was really finding the whole passion about what I'm passionate about,
Yeah.
but also in the same vein, within a couple of weeks of this whole conversation, I met a stranger at a party and we were just having a chat. And he stopped me in my tracks and he goes, "Hey, Paul, I know why you're here." And I went, "Yeah, it's Nick's party." He goes, "No, no, I know why you're here." And I said, "Well, who else's who else's birthday is it?" He goes, "No, no, no, I know why you're here on the planet." And I was like, "Wow, this is going to be an interesting conversation."
Mhm.
He goes, "You're here to make a difference." And I was like, "Wow, it's the first time anyone had given me my purpose in life." And it still resonates today.
Mm.
So I built this brand on this purpose of you're here to make a difference. That was the whole purpose. So I had this vision, I had the passion, I had this purpose of making a difference.
Mhm.
And really, what I've done over the last 20 years is turned SalesStar into a purpose driven, value led organization.
Mhm.
It just so happened to be um, aligned with my whole passion and my purpose in the business,
Mhm.
the vision. So 20 years later, you know, we do have a fantastic culture, which is driven around uh, being on purpose. It's driven around our core values.
Mhm.
And as we speak, we are, we have joint venture practices in the UK, Sweden, Mexico, of all places, from New Zealand. I never thought that would happen. Australia, New Zealand, and we have 7 franchises in the US. So that's sort of like a little bit about the background. Now I know there's probably another part to your question, which is
And that's awesome. I also just wanted to say how it's great to it's great how that it goes back to that one saying. It's like, hey, name that one franchise from New Zealand. He's like, nope, none. Okay, I'll be that. And then there you go today. That's awesome. So sorry, but keep ahead. Go ahead on the second half of who you guys help, all those things. That would be awesome as well. So, and thank you again for sharing that story. I knew a little bit about that when we had our first conversation, but of course, it's great to hear it again, and now everybody else can hear that as well.
yeah, yeah. So I'm wired to help entrepreneurs. So the our avatar is entrepreneur
Okay.
who generally owns a business that has a technical product or a service. So that's kind of my background, right? Selling technical products and services. And, I can see all of the complexities that technical salespeople have. They, they don't humanize the approach to selling. They don't ask enough questions,
Yeah.
and they often don't realize that it's a process and a system.
Yeah.
So then they end up speaking a lot of technical jargon,
Yeah.
and they
Listen to this feature. It's so cool. It's like,
want to speak about all the features and benefits and
yeah.
acronyms, and but that's not how to sell. There's a
Mhm.
whole science around selling. So our avatar generally has a business that's 10 to 100 mil, and they have a massive appetite for growth, right? So, um, but they often have stagnated,
Mm.
right? So they've had a good product or a service that has typically sold themselves.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a bit of competition or things have changed.
Yeah.
They've started to stagnate. They don't know why, but there's the real symptoms of entrepreneur is they're frustrated, they're confused, they're worried about sales,
Mhm.
and they're stressed. They go through this because sales often isn't straightforward. It's this sort of black box, this
Yeah.
sort of complex puzzle that we have to
Maneuvering
navigate
around.
through. Now, if you're a founder CEO that has come from a technical background, like an engineer or an
Mhm.
accountant or an architect, they they don't have a sales background at all, or they could be an accountant for that matter, right?
Mhm.
Um, so they go through this expensive exercise of playing. I call it CEO whack-a-mole.
Okay.
So, they get a new head of sales, whack, that didn't work. They get new salespeople, whack, that didn't work. They get a new strategy, whack, that didn't work. They get new CRM, whack, that didn't work.
Mhm.
And they're sitting there going, I've done just about everything I need to do, and sales. still isn't consistent. It's still not
Mhm.
predictable. What do I do? So the what we do at SalesStar is we make it very simple for them to scale their business.
Mhm.
We put the science behind sales success, and we start off by evaluating the whole sales organization.
Mhm.
And we've got a lot of testing tools.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always data driven decisions.
Perfect.
Guessing isn't a strategy. You've got to
Yeah.
remove all the assumptions, the guess, the opinions. You've got to really grow business through an objective data, you know,
Yeah.
driven way.
Agreed.
So, and I look at that, and there's an analogy as when I was an electrician. You don't go up to a machine and start ripping out pieces of the machine and go through a process of elimination to find out what the root cause is.
Mm.
No, you don't. You plug in testing equipment and you find out, what's actually broken, what the root cause is, and you
Mhm.
fix that.
Yeah. What do you
So,
think what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that a lot of these companies usually make in their processes that they, hey, this is how we think it should work? Because there's so many, and I love your thoughts on this as well. I think there's so many gurus now online, like, here's the best five top sales tips that you can use and all these things, but oftentimes they are just spitting a bunch of jargon that doesn't really lead anywhere. So what do you think are some of these mistakes that these companies are making that doesn't allow them to reach a point where they are content with the processes and the sales that they are able to bring in through what they do?
well, you just sort of mentioned a whole bunch of tactics. That's not how you're going to scale your business.
Mhm.
You know, cheesy closing lines, pushy sales tactics is not the way to grow
Yeah.
sales. If you wanna grow sales, stop selling and start consulting.
Mm.
First and foremost, you've got to have the right methodology, a better methodology, and you have to have a methodology that elevates you over and above your competitors and elevates you to this trusted advisor status. So, do I trust this person, or are they just trying to sell me something? Are they trying to manipulate this conversation
Yeah.
for the betterment of them rather than me? So the first thing I would suggest is, a consultative methodology works really well,
Mhm.
and the reason why it works is our definition of consultative selling is this: enhancement of client profits.
Mhm.
Enhancement of client profits. So that is a strategy. The methodology becomes a strategy, not a tactic. So the question is how do you enhance your clients' profits? You can either help them grow their top line
Mhm.
or reduce their costs.
Yeah.
So now your strategy when you're interacting with a client, you need to be customer centric and you need to understand where they are in their business and in the relation to how you help them,
Yeah.
what their bottlenecks are, what they're stuck on, and how you can improve their profitability by either growing their revenue or
Mhm.
reducing their cost base. Now, if you can do both of those, you as a provider don't have to be the cheapest provider. You can actually sell on value,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's you think about the strategy, but you also think about why does sales get stuck and why don't people move forward?
Mhm.
And it's simply this: not enough client motivation because the salesperson didn't ask the right questions to
Yeah.
find out exactly where the client's pain points are
Mhm.
and didn't ask further questions to find out, well, what's the consequence of not fixing this problem? What's
Mhm.
the cost of this problem?
Yeah, the cost of
When
inaction.
the
Mhm.
cost of inaction is so important to us because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we as a sales we as salespeople, as a trusted advisor, we need to bring a solution that
Mhm.
is a business case that needs to have an ROI.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the size of the problem in relation to what you're actually presenting as a solution, you've got to understand that your solution fixes the problem, but gives them a strong return on
Yeah.
investment.
100%.
Yeah. So that's kind of part
Mhm.
of the solution on your question, but the real challenge that most companies have is they haven't systemized sales,
Hmm.
right? Sales training is what you do when you don't know what else to do, and it doesn't work by itself, right? So we take the our stance at SalesStar is to understand um, first and foremost is we have three phases in our sales success,
Okay.
and that is sales success equals clarity
Hmm.
times activity times effectiveness, and it
Nice.
all
I like
relates
that.
to
Yeah.
what we have as a nine-step strategic sales system.
Hmm.
And the first part of getting clarity is understanding if you've got the right people in the right seats doing the right things.
Hmm.
So, do you have the sales leader doing what they should be doing? Or did they rise up to the top because they're the best salesperson, but they don't really have the capabilities to hold the team accountable, to
Yeah.
coach
And the
the team, to
vision.
recruit the team, to
Yeah.
motivate the team, to inspire
Hmm.
leadership team, to have one-on-one, to have effective set sales
Yeah.
meetings, to manage the sales pipeline, and the list
Hmm.
goes on, right?
Yeah.
But then conversely,
Hmm.
salespeople in the right roles. You know, have you looked at your sales process in relation to your strategy? And this is where most companies get it wrong. They're
Mm.
trying to recruit without really thinking about their strategy first. So we go, once we understand the people, we look at your strategy. Like, what's the fastest way to go from where you are now to where you want to be?
Mm.
Now, is that to grow your existing account base? Because it's actually 5 times more cost effective to sell to existing customers than to win new business.
Yeah. Just
Why?
increase
Because they
sales
already know
efficiency.
you, they already trust you,
Yeah.
right? And you already have their names and there's a relationship.
Yeah.
So, the strategy should be how do you grow your share of wallet with your existing client base? Once you understand what that potential is, the shortfall is going to be new business. So, how much new business do we need to win with whom?
Hmm.
Who's our ideal ICP? What's our go-to market strategy to acquire
Hmm.
those customers? Do we have the right people in place to actually um, hunt, develop, and
Yeah.
grow that new business base?
Hmm.
And so now you're looking at, okay, I need possibly maybe two or three types of people in the business.
Hmm.
You need finders, minders, and grinders, I always say. So
I like that.
you might have SDRs making appointments, or you might have a hunter that takes the whole process from woe to go. But then
Hmm.
you also have account managers and farmers, which are different as well, because account
Hmm.
managers are good at managing a relationship, but a farmer is good at strategically and aggressively growing share of wallet.
Hmm.
So you can understand which people will serve you to get to your strategy. Then, once you've got your strategy, you've got to look at your processes. So you've got a new
Hmm.
business process, you've got an account management process, so you've got probably different processes
Yeah.
depending on the types of products or services you're selling.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a uniform way of your people executing on your strategy. So this is where you get your flywheel, you get
Yeah.
that inertia going. If you've got the right people in the right seats with a clear strategy, doing the right thing, you're going to get inertia.
Yeah.
And now it's about the manager's job becomes so much easier because there's a we develop a milestone centric process. So
Okay.
there's key milestones, and in those milestones are clear objectives. There's clear tasks to do. There's a clear checklist.
Hmm.
So it becomes easy for the manager to go, okay, Joel, I know you're short on your targets. Let's have a look at this deal specifically. Where are you in your deal? It's like,
Hmm.
how come you're presenting a solution when these things haven't happened?
Mm.
So, what do you think you might have missed? So you've missed having the right conversations with the decision makers. You haven't established where their pain is or the cost of that pain. You don't
Hmm.
know how they make buying decisions, and you're trying to pitch a solution before we've checked all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we often find that people or salespeople get excited and they present way too early
Yeah.
in the process, right?
Yeah, I think, first of all, so much to unpack there. It's so awesome, and it goes back to the first conversation we had where you said, "Yeah, sure, sales star, and we help with sales, but there's so much more in the foundation of sales that allows that to happen. It's not just sales itself; it's the processes, it's the right people in the right place, it's doing the right things, it's making sure that you actually aren't just selling and pitching whatever you want, right? Like really find their constraints, find their pains, all these things, and it's I just wanted to highlight that because I think so many people get caught up into the just sell better, just ask better questions. Sure, that's part of it, but that's not how you actually get the outcome, right? There's so many
Yeah.
things underneath to allow that to happen, and so many things that you brought up. That sorry, go ahead.
Most is just wing it. Like they
Yeah.
you think about like most engineering companies will have a process to engineer something or deliver services.
Hmm.
Architectural company the same. Accounting company, they have good systems and processes to deliver accurate accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, if they delivered a set of accounts that was 95% inaccurate, that'd be a disaster,
Yeah.
right? But you know, all of these professions have good operations and good systems in their, in terms of their delivery, but often they don't have sales systemized.
Yeah.
It's neglected. It,
Yeah, it's like they send it to the salespeople. And it's like, do your best. I know you can close. And it's like, it's not about closing. Sure, that's part of the process. Again, you need to close, but you need to close the right person. You need to make sure that you are giving them value. It's not like just sell it to sell. It's like, is this the right fit for this person? And there's so many steps to really find that out first, right? So it's so awesome. And I also wanted to highlight another thing that you brought up, which is I think so many companies they start having this one really star sales guy or a gal that is killing it, and they rise to the top. It's like that's the person who's gonna manage things. It's like no 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 no. Like they maybe but oftentimes just keep them as a top person. They don't have to be that in that managerial position to take care of everything else. Just let them do what they're good at and find someone else that can take care of the rest.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's one of the deadliest sins that of sales management. It's making your top performer the sales manager
Yeah.
because it's a different skill set. Like if you're a top
Yeah.
salesperson, doesn't mean you're good at managing and leading a team.
Hmm.
And when I see people in those situations, and what happens, when the pressure's on, is they find themselves 80% of the time out selling to their own accounts and try to single handedly grow the business through their salesmanship, right? At the end of the day, they need their fix because, they're wired to get sales.
Yeah.
But they neglect the fact that they're not coaching, developing,
Mm.
and really driving the performance up of the team, which is what a sales manager should do. There's kind of
Hmm.
one number one rule for a sales manager, and that's to grow your people to grow sales.
Hmm.
That's the skill set you need to have as a sales manager.
Grow your people to grow sales.
Yeah.
That's interesting. When it do you find that the customers you work with they become really held on the process or not even a process, right? Just what they've always done before. It's like, hey, but we've always done it. And then do you find that it's hard to really tell them what you've always done is what got you to where you are now, which is not what you need to keep moving forward? How do you find that like that's a difficult conversation to have a lot of times or no?
Well, do you know what the most expensive words you can ever hear in business?
We've always done it this way.
Yeah, exactly. We've always done it this way. It's like what got us here is
Yeah.
not going to get us where we need to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we do is change management. You need
Mm-hmm.
to change thinking. It all starts, fish rots from the head, I always say. So, stinky thinking it's led from the top. So, when you ask me what our ICP is, I said it's growth. Well, I said it's entrepreneur who's growth minded,
Yeah.
and growth minded people tend to understand that they need to change, and what they're currently doing isn't servicing them.
Mm-hmm.
So, or serving them, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's the willingness to adapt and to change. But you have to lead people through change. You have to,
Yep.
it's the same thing in selling that applies to change management. You ask the questions about what they're currently doing, what
Yep.
the bottlenecks are. Do you think it's serving them? What's the impact if they don't change or find a better way?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got to ask, are they open to a different way? So let's have a look at the options of what we could do that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you've got to get people's minds open to an idea that there is a better way and a better system, first and foremost, and then take people through the journey to unpack
Yeah.
what a better system or a process could look like.
Hmm. That's
And
awesome.
I've got this. One of my favorite sayings is, "Those who plan the fight don't fight the plan." So you have to take your people with you to develop your strategy and your process. So there's a sense of ownership, because if it's bestowed on them because you've done a chat GPT and they said, "Hey, this is the best strategy," or some sales training expert has said, "Here's your process," it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Huh.
And
That's so
I think
interesting.
that's another fundamental mistake, is we always facilitate a sales process and the systems for the company.
Hmm.
It's not our sales system or process. We're saying, use this, because I don't think that works either. At
Mm.
the end of the day, every company has some nuances, and it's really important that the people develop and own that process and system.
Hmm. That's awesome. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with the buyer's pyramid by Chet Holmes?
Yes.
Yeah, I love how. And I would love. I want to hear if you agree with this as well. I would say that I'll just use Pareto's principle here. Like 80% of companies really just try to focus on the top 3%, right? So the people that are really in that buying mind frame, they're gonna buy. It doesn't matter if it's you, if it's me, if it's someone down the street, they're gonna buy regardless. They just have to make the decision on who that is. But so many of them neglect that 67% that's rest. There's that bottom 30, which are never in our target market, but they neglect that 67%. And I think that a lot of times they do it because they don't know, going back to your point before, how to go through that discovery, the question asking process, the asking questions process in the right way to really allow the prospect, if it is the right decision for them, to figure things out by themselves. It's like they're trying to put that square peg into the round hole, or is it the opposite? Anyways, you get what I'm saying. They try to do that. They just try to push that through to that top 3%, and then the ones that aren't in that top 3%, they're like, "This isn't it, man. Like I'm just trying to get things right."
Oh,
What are your thoughts on that?
yeah,
That
look,
was a bit of a messy
I'll
explanation.
color on the picture here, because Chet Holmes wrote a book called "Creating the Ultimate Sales Machine." It's probably on my
Yeah, I have it
bookshelf.
somewhere here too. Yeah.
Yes, it's somewhere, but I haven't read it for decades. And
Mm,
the first time I came across that book was 2008. Now, in 2008, uh, we had this thing called the global financial crisis.
yeah.
And I was probably 3 or 4 years into my business,
Hmm.
and we had 8 people working in the business. And in a short period of time, I went from 8 people just to myself. So I went from a company to a lonely,
Mm,
almost lost everything. And I had to reinvent the way we were selling.
mm,
And so I read a lot of books and spoke to a lot of thought leaders on selling in tough economic times. And Chet Holmes was one of the books I read. And just to build on this buyer's pyramid, in the book, he then says the reason why you're not engaging more than 3% is you're selling tactically. If you're selling tactically, you're only selling to the problem aware people that are ready to
hmm.
buy now.
Yeah.
But if you want to engage the wider audience that were maybe either considering buying or weren't considering, you have to sell more strategically, right? So I've given you one piece of that puzzle, which is consultative selling as a strategy.
Yeah.
But the other piece was around your messaging. He has this concept called the stadium pitch. And
Hmm.
he says, imagine if you had a stadium full of your ideal clients, right? There's 10,000 of them. The reality, only 3% is going to buy if you're selling tactically. So, how do you engage the wider audience? And this played out to me because during the global financial crisis,
Mm,
at the time, our core offer was, we can help you recruit top salespeople, and we can help train your salespeople to be top salespeople. So I used to be able to ring business owners and say, "Hey, it's Paul O'Donohue from SalesStar here. Joao, we help recruit top sales performers, and we help train your salespeople to be top performers." And 1 in 5 or 2 in 5 would say, "Come and see me."
mm,
That's the short story. Now, through the global financial crisis, that was not working because I was selling tactically.
hmm.
And what I would hear the CEO say is, "Paul, We're not hiring, we're firing. We've got to right size the business. And training's a discretionary spend. So I'd ring 50 companies and get the same reply, which was no, go away.
Yeah.
So after reading Chet Holmes and thinking about how do I sell more strategically, I came up with these concepts called positioning statements.
Mm,
And the positioning statement was state your audience, state an emotion to a problem they're having. So there's three parts to that, and we still teach that today to get
mm,
the attention of your perfect avatar. And so I changed my pitch to be more strategic, and
okay.
now my phone calls were I'd reach out and say, Joel, I work with CEOs who are really concerned about how the economy is impacting on their sales.
Much
Like,
more
guess what?
resonating with them. Yeah.
Right. And the real acid test to that is tell me more. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a CEO. I'm really concerned about this global financial crisis and how it's impacting my sales. Like, I don't, that is such more of a strategic conversation
Yeah.
than being tactical, where they can
Mhm,
say yes or no. Um, and it has people say, tell me more, tell me more. I want to know what you do.
mhm.
So, I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but
it's awesome. Yeah, no, it's great that you added that because one, it's putting like a bookmark on my head, like I need to read that book again. That's one, and then two, it's great to get these use case scenarios or like these real life scenarios because I think so many leaders as well they struggle to even identify like which is which. Like you said your first example was like that sounds great to me. Some people might say I was like okay sure it might if you're in that market and you're in like in that top 3%, great. But if you're not, then it doesn't. So it won't reflect. How does that actually differ when you're actually talking to these people? How do you resonate your offer? Because the services, anything else on the background won't change, but how you position it changes. Position it to what they want
how you
because you're going to
position
solve
it.
their problems, right?
Yeah, if you position it and you use those three frameworks I just mentioned,
Yeah,
target audience, CEO, because psychological, they go, well, I'm a CEO. That's kind of social proof. You're speaking to me.
yeah,
People always feel and remember that raw emotion. It could be worried, stress, concern, frustrated,
hmm,
you know, about an overarching problem that would generally cater for that
yeah,
wider audience, which
uh-huh,
would be, it might be we work with CEOs that are really frustrated about their sales team's effectiveness.
hmm,
They know they can be doing better, but they just don't know how to do that.
hmm, yeah,
Now,
just
do you think
pieces.
that most people would go, actually, I would like my sales team to be more effective and better?
Mm,
And I've struggled in terms of I don't know the exact science or what to do. I've been playing CEO whack a mole, and that hasn't worked.
yeah,
I am frustrated. I wasn't ready for sales training or ready to buy, but I'm curious to know how
mm,
there could be a better way.
that's awesome. I love that. I love that a lot. And it goes. I think it's always it's tying back to our first conversation where I think so many times we speak with people and you're like, yeah, I resonate with some of the things that they say, but some of the things not really. And like I told you when we first talked, everything that you're saying, I'm like, if I had three thumbs, I would put all of them up. I only have two, so it's like complete resonation with me. So it's awesome to hear that. And I love to ask a couple, a little bit more, I guess, personal questions on your growth as you've been on
Cool.
this entrepreneurial journey here, Paul. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started this entire journey, and of course, leading to where you are now today?
Wow. Is there anything I wish I knew before? In some ways, I'd say I wish I didn't because I probably wouldn't have started.
Hmm.
If I knew how hard it would have been and how long it would have taken,
Mm-hmm.
and how much bloody stress that goes with being an entrepreneur, like most people in their right minds would not be an entrepreneur.
No way.
But I think we take on all the risk, on all the stress, just so we don't have to report into a boss and tell them what we need to do.
That's
But,
hilarious and so true,
yeah,
and
so
so true as well.
I think the main thing here was, I was inspired about growing a global brand.
Hmm.
And so, as you know, we're in about we're 7 countries.
Hmm.
But every time you set up a country, there's a lot of compliance that goes with that. You've got to comply with their local tax laws. You've got to get local lawyers. You've got to set up. It's that whole compliance stuff,
Mhm.
and it's expensive and costly.
Mm.
So now knowing what I know now,
Mhm.
we when we entered into the US, I went, you know what, that's a pretty damn big market. Like,
Yeah.
why would we go anywhere else?
Mm.
So we've paid a lot of idiot tax to get things right,
Yeah.
and you kind of continue to do that as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Um, I think pain is a really good teacher.
Yeah.
Because, what it does is, especially when you're shelling out money, I call it paying idiot tax. You
Yeah.
pay all that money out and you've got to go, that was so painful.
But
Like,
the lesson came with it. Yeah.
you got to sit inside that pain and
Mhm.
you've got to wrestle down what were actually the lessons here? Like,
Mhm.
what did we get wrong? And so that's why I say pain's
Yeah.
a good teacher,
That's
because it
awesome.
gives you that raw emotion and you have to
Mhm.
sit inside that for quite some time and really reflect on what you've done wrong. There's been many things that I've done wrong,
Mhm.
um, but I don't tend to dwell on that either.
Yeah.
I've got a positive disposition by nature, and I'll always turn a wrong into there's a silver lining in in this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
But that was kind of one of the things is the lessons I've learned
Mhm.
is and it's hard to sort of understand when you're a new entrepreneur. I like Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great, but he said, when you're starting off, you don't want to fire all your cannonballs at once
Mm.
because you're going to use all your big ammo and run out of ammo, and you might not hit the target. He says, fire a lot of bullets, go ping, 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 pop them off. And when the bullets start hitting the target on a more regular basis,
Mhm.
then load up your cannonballs.
Mhm.
So, that way you're going to be right on target.
Yeah.
So, um, but I think also some of the key learnings of what I know to be true is people. At the end of the day, we're a people business and people matter. So having really, really good people that align with your purpose and your core values, like
Mhm.
it's one of the things I'm most proud about is the culture we've created.
That's
You
awesome.
could go anywhere in the world and meet a SalesStar person, and it's like an extended family. In fact,
Mm.
someone said it's like an extended family every time we get together. I went, no, it's better than a family reunion. And they said, why is that? And I went, you can't pick your own family.
Ah. That's hilarious. Like right here we have the best of the best, and when it comes to what's it called? The in-laws are like, oh, fingers crossed. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
But and I'll tell you another little aha moment.
Sure.
And that is like I love working with entrepreneurs,
Mm.
and so my biggest like if I'm working for an entrepreneur, and I don't work with that many, there's a few people that I do some mentoring around. Like the companies we work with now tend to be larger companies between 10 and 100 mil
Yeah.
and beyond. There's some billion-dollar companies,
Mhm.
but I don't have a relationship with them anymore because I'm not delivering or coaching.
Mhm.
But my biggest advice to entrepreneurs is business by design.
Mm.
So for me, I was so hell bent chasing world domination to grow this global brand that I really didn't, for many years, didn't design the business around my lifestyle and what I needed. I put
Mm.
everyone before me. I spent all my money back into business growth, and some of that worked, some of it didn't work. As I
Mhm.
mentioned, a lot of idiot tax. But I would get really, really clear on how does the business serve you? Does the business work for you, or do you work for it? And so,
Mm.
really, as an entrepreneur, what we aspire to is having a business that works for us, not us work for it.
Mhm.
So, therefore, if you put yourself first, what does a business need to look like to serve you, your family, your lifestyle, your goals, your bucket list? whatever you do in life, because you've only got one life, you've only got one shot at it,
Mhm.
design your business to achieve that.
Mm. I love that. That's awesome. I think, yeah, we get lost along the way, right? It gets caught up into doing this. I got to take care of the employees now, and the million things that pile up, and then there's never a list or a day where there's nothing left on the list of to do, and you go to the next day, and that stacks on top more. So, I love that. I love that insight a lot. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. And I have one final question here for you.
Yeah, yes, no problems.
Paul, which actually, funnily enough, it's not a question for me. It's a question for my last guest to you, and they had no idea
Oh,
who you
still
were.
alive, yes. Okay.
Yes, I stole this section from Diary of a CEO. They do this as well, where they get the guest ask the next guest a question, and I find it actually brings so much some interesting insights as well. And this one actually feeds perfectly into what we were just talking about, which I completely forgot. But here's the question: Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
So here it is. If there was one thing you could change in the growth trajectory of your company, what would that one thing be and why?
Yes. So I think I shared this one with you pre this recording. And so I look at businesses, and this is kind of like stems from my engineering sort of mindset. I look at systems and I look at processes, and business, that's all it is, systems and processes.
Hmm.
And I try and understand what the bottlenecks are of any business. So for me right now, the thing that's playing on my mind in terms of growth is removing a lot of the complexity out of the business.
Yep.
So I've got this whole mantra at the moment. We've got to take you can't scale complexity.
Hmm.
You've got to take the complex and you've got to make it simple, and you've got to make the simple compelling,
Mm.
right? So now we have my whole methodology and my mindset is simplify the business and make it compelling. Now, then I look at the what is the bottleneck, and the crux in the business in terms of the main bottleneck for me is self-booked meetings. At
Mm.
the end of the day, our business is simple in the sense that it's revenue per coach, and we have a lot of coaches that sell, can sell, but won't prospect.
Mm.
So, if we put that coach in front of a our ICP in terms of a CEO of a mid-sized company, they're at home.
Mm.
They can have those conversations. They go
Mhm.
through us. They don't have to, because we don't, even though our name's SalesStar, it's consultative star.
Yeah.
It's a consultative process, and they're
Yeah.
so
Just
familiar
yeah.
with it.
We were talking before. Yeah.
So the bottleneck for me is we're focused on one thing right now. It's how do we generate
Mm.
self-book meetings through good marketing practices. So that is the number one thing impeding our growth at the moment. If we could solve that one thing,
Mm.
we could really just radically scale up the business. Because here's the thing: at the end of the day, we've got a good brand, we've got good culture, we've got good systems, we've got good IP.
Yeah.
Coaches love SalesStar, right? It's the place to be. But we will not retain coaches if they go hungry.
Mm.
So if we can feed the coaches, right, full of ideal prospects, this thing's really easy to scale.
Mm, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And from the last guest, and it's funny because oftentimes this question, sometimes it has nothing to do with the conversation. Like someone asks another person, like, "Hey, what shoe would you want to be?" It's like it doesn't fit, but this one was completely, very fitting for everything that we talked about. So thank you so much for sharing that as well, Paul. And thank you for your time. This has been such an incredible conversation. Usually we go a little bit shorter, and this one we're close to the full hour mark. So I really appreciate your time, your stories, your insights. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about yourself, or of course a little bit more about SalesStar?
Well, look, if people want to reach out to me and talk to me, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Paul O'Donohue, or Paul O at salesstar.com. So that's two S's in the middle, or visit our website, that's salesstar.com. And yeah, that's where you can find us. Look, happy to, if you actually mention you saw me on this podcast, I personally will give you 15 minutes of my time to talk to you to just understand what's going on in your business, to see, if we can steer you in the right way and unpack what's actually preventing you scaling up your sales as you should deserve.
100% amazing. Well, for everyone listening, of course, I will leave all of Paul's links down here below so you can check them out if you want. And if you enjoy listening to this conversation and you want to hear more conversations like this, please subscribe and I will see you on the next episode. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
I loved it, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you. Thanks.